Hey everybody, this is Chris, MTGO is Rexstart, and I'm back for part 2 in this week's video, and I'm going to take a look at some of the other decks that I thought were a little more interesting, and maybe use some new cards. And this one is only finished 2 and 2, but I really like the design on it. So while I normally only cover decks that finish 3 and 1 or better, I thought I'd take a look at some relatively new territory here. With this small time event, you had to play most people gravitated towards a tribe that didn't have a lot of subtypes because you had to avoid in your main tribal base including anything that was a cat, a human, a wizard, things like that. So Beast was certainly one way to go, and it gave Slug 360 a chance to experiment with the bloodrush mechanic. Bloodrush, if you haven't seen it, it's new in Gatecrash. It allows you to discard the card, basically like Channel from Kamigawa block, and give an attacking creature, it has to be an attacking creature, some kind of pump ability, and it's generally the power, toughness, and ability of the creature, sort of equivalent as this. So it's essentially a split card between a creature and a pump spell. Now, split cards are very good in general for their versatility, but having this sort of creature spell split is particularly good in Legacy Tribal Wars because it allows you to get, you're required to run 20 creatures, but this allows you to get some other usefulness when a creature is not what you want right now. Unfortunately, most of the guys with Channel from Kamigawa block, although we'll see one in Kuma's list here in a moment, were not all that great. The Bloodrush ones are actually quite good and quite well costed, and we've seen a couple here. Slug was running Slaughterhorn, which is nearly a giant growth, and Gorklan Rampager, which I think is starting to see some play in Standard, if I heard right. It's 2 mana Bloodrush ability, gives you +4/+4 and trample to a creature, and if you just want to play it out as a guy, it's a 4/4 trampler for 4, which isn't bad either. Nice curve topper in a deck like this. So I like the inclusion of these guys, and since he had these guys to sort of act as spells, he felt free to play a few more creatures, and play some off-tribe guys here. Wild Nicodle and Tarmogoyf and Dark Confidant. This is basically a Dark Zoo list, or what you might call Domain Zoo, although it isn't splashing the blue land to get the full 5 out of Tribal Flames. It's only got a couple copies of Tribal Flames here, but basically a Dark Zoo list. It's definitely it's trying to beat down quick. It's got 12 1-drops. Pump out as much damage as possible, and then finish your opponent off with some burn. It is very all-in on these Bloodrush spells expose you. I think the weakness of them in the Tribal Legacy Wars format is that they expose you to getting 2-for-1 basically by any kind of instant speed spot removal that your opponent might use in response to channeling the Bloodrush, and that is definitely a drawback because Sword Splashers, Path to Exile, Lightning Bolt all over the place in this format. So that's kind of the downside of this, but if you can catch your opponent tapped out, hey, turn 1 Furnace Scamp coming in, Gorklan Rampager it, it's doing 5 on its own plus the 3 from the sacrifice ability if you choose to use that. The Karplusan Wolverine, kind of an odd choice here, but it is a beast 1-drop, and people are not all that likely to block it. They may not really care about it. In fact, because it can deal a damage to one of your own utility creatures, if you block it, some people might actually be afraid to block the thing, and at that point you can go ahead and blood rush it and get some extra damage in. So not a totally bad choice there. The Dark Confidant in this kind of deck basically allows you to draw into, and in practice it allows you to sort of draw into the burn spells you're going to use to finish your opponent off. But this kind of deck really loves to have some card advantage, try to refill the hand a little bit, recover from a board sweeper, that sort of thing. So that's sort of the principle of why there's the Dark in Dark Zoo. The mana base is the tough thing with those kind of decks because it's very difficult to build. You have to build the right kind of fetch lands and have a plan for sort of what order you're gonna fetch out out in order to get your Tribal Flames active, for instance. The white's only being used here to pump up the Wild Nicodle. He's not casting any spells in it. He's pretty solidly in red-green, and that allows him to focus on the red-green lands and have a pretty stable mana base, all things considered. He's got a couple basics in there to fetch. So, anyways, very interesting looking beast deck. I like the way that he worked with the small-time rules to sort of figure out a way. Well, if I'm gonna need to add these guys off tribe and play this kind of build, how can I do something else with these beasts? And hey, bloodrush. So new mechanic, cool mechanic, nice to see it here. Let's look now at Kumagoro Spirits deck, which I'm going to guess he probably says something about in the article, but I liked it and I wanted to take a look at it. One of the reasons I like it is it's just kind of cool to see spirits in colors that you don't normally associate with spirits, like Boros. He does have a very light green splash here for Tamanoa. And looking at this deck, it's kind of hard to figure out exactly why some of these choices were made. Tamanoa, whenever a non-creature source you control deals damage, you gain that much life, is a card that obviously works pretty well with any kind of damage spells. It makes your Lightning Helixes doubly insane, and your Johnny Vengeance pretty awesome as well. I actually, rules question, not really sure if this would work with Ghostlit Raider. I'm guessing it's still a creature even when it's being used as a channel. I'm not 100% on that. Glitterfang I can't say I'm awfully impressed by, but it looks to me, and it's hard to say here, okay, but it looks to me almost like this started life as some sort of Boros Reckoner Blasphemous Act combo deck, and then somewhere along the line lost most of the Reckoners in the Blasphemous Acts, because it's got some pieces of that here. Something like Guardian of the Guild Pack that seems designed to survive your own damage-based sweepers, for instance. I mean, it's good just against the metagame, but it's especially good in that sort of environment. And Blasphemous Act combined with Tamanoa seems like it's set up to gain you an absurd amount of life. So I almost wonder if maybe there was a thought here of that kind of deck, and then it just sort of morphed into something else. So maybe Kuma will give some more explanation there. But anyways, I definitely like a Johnny Vengeance. He's a way to get some repeatable removal against your opponent, gain some life. He can also, tap a guy down. He has some control elements. He's definitely very good in mid-range. I like seeing Balefire Liege, which allows you to pump all of these double-colored red and white guys in here, and also get a little incidental damage off of any of the red spells that you deal. Help them close out the game a bit quicker. Aurelius Fury is a new one. I've picked up a few copies since they're kind of cheap right now, and I don't think they'll be as cheap in a few months as they are right now. Definitely come the fall when Bonfire of the Damned rotates out. But this card, if your deck has the capability of making a lot of mana, I think is pretty insane. And he's got a couple in here. Again, I'm not sure if this exactly is the kind of deck that would want to have it in. Although obviously it's good with Tamanoa. That could be said for any kind of direct damage spell. But I think this thing could definitely be a total house in any sort of mid-range deck or ramp deck, and it's really awesome against opposing weenie strategies, which have been extremely prevalent in the event. So Aurelius Fury, one to kind of look out for going forward. So it's got a couple of odd choices here. I don't know, Thundersong Trumpeter to sort of turn off a creature there, and then Stun Sniper. Again, this kind of seems like he's maybe trying to hold off early creature rush, but he does got a lot of removal and other things in here. Boros Reckoner is just a nightmare to attack into. But I would definitely look at doing something like this and maybe upping the Reckoners and going to some kind of, using this as kind of a shell for some kind of Reckoner Blasphemous Act combo where it was maybe just incidental to an otherwise, very solid good stuff build here, but that gave you sort of an occasional out of nowhere combo finish. So let's take a look. The last deck I'll show you is my deck that went 3-1. and this was a Tezzeret control deck. I went 3-1 with it, but effectively I really only went more like 2-2 because one of my wins was a very close one against Romulos that I was awarded the win, but it was on a technicality because he had some Augury Adepts in his Kithkin base, which under these special rules you couldn't have any of the subtypes like Wizard or anything in your core 20, so he had an illegal deck list. But anyways, my idea here was that I had been wanting to build a Tezzeret list for a while. I owned 4 of them in paper from about the time Mirrodin Besieged came out, managed to get very lucky opening them, and then never built one the entire time it was in Standard. They're just still sitting in a binder somewhere, so I thought, well, let me pick them up online and see what I can do with them. And I noticed that there are a lot of artifact creature birds, and that seemed like a good way to go with it, because using a artifact creature tribal base obviously powers the heck out of this guy, and this deck has, last count, I think somewhere in the upper 20s on creature count. So the easy includes were Baleful Strix, was a new one from the Plane Chase, and Parasitic Strix here, and Tight Hollow Strix. All very solid. Definitely wanted to include those. I waffled back and forth a lot on what the other ones should be. At one point it was pure blue-black, so I could try to do Inkmoth Nexus, take a little strain off of this, and give me that whole Inkmoth Nexus Tezzeret thing, which is awkward but powerful. But I ended up going ahead with white here for the Aven Rift Watcher. And I had, at the last minute, swapped out Junk Divers as being too cutesy. In place of, I added Raven Familiar instead, which lets me dig a little bit into my library, because I found generally I was only winning the games. I mean, you know, these guys are fine just swinging in for 1 or whatever, sometimes wins, but generally I was only winning the game when I dug to a Tezzeret, and I had a lot of situations where I just really needed to dig to a Damnation. I thought that this guy was a good swap in at the last minute, and then adding white to give me that life gain there was huge against aggro decks. I have a couple of swords here. Again, it's just something I can try to find with Tezzeret and then hopefully close out the game. Divining Top was fine. It really liked the way that it let me, even though I only had 23 lands, pretty reliably when I drew it, get to enough lands to be able to cast Tezzeret. I would have liked to find the room for a little bit more mana acceleration here with the Dimir Signets. I felt like I pretty much had to run my forces in this list on account of Tezzeret being really critical. Again, if I knew that there weren't going to be a lot of O-rings and other things hanging around that could kill Tezzeret, then I would have probably happily swapped in some more mana acceleration, or even some more creature removal for these. But I thought it would be important to have some way to be able to tap out, play my Tezzeret, protect it, untap with the thing, and try to win. Of course, if you untap with him after +1ing him, you can immediately use the ultimate, which depending on what stage of the game it is either going to give you a massive life swing at the cost of your Tezzeret, or could just win the game outright. I liked the fact that the Strix, both of these two with Death Touch, pretty much demand that your opponent remove them. So you're gonna get advantage there, because they're gonna have to blow a burn spell on this. And of course, if it's a Baleful Strix, you've already drawn into something. You can set up what you're drawing if you're Baleful Strix with Divining Tops, and of course the mana base I wanted to max out on the artifact lands that were in my primary colors here, so that I could make Tezzeret that much better. But I made sure that I included enough fetch lands here to make the tops at their best. So anyways, this is a deck I spent a long time tinkering with, several weeks tinkering with this before I finally ran it at an event. Super fun to play. Tezzeret is a card that has a lot of different decisions involved, and is very difficult to play with. There are a lot of times you just don't know, do you want to make a guy a 5/5, do you want to dig? Sometimes you're like, do I ultimate now, or do I hold that? Very difficult decision tree with Tezzeret, and I think I will probably run this deck again at some point, because I feel like if I had more practice using Tezzeret and thinking those situations through, I could probably play this a bit more flawlessly. I definitely made some mistakes in the event. Anyways, those are the decks for this week. If you come back in part 3, I'm going to go ahead and show some match replay footage of my Tezzeret control bird deck in action, and I will see you then.